everybody. Welcome to another podcast of All Things Considered Franchising. I'm your host, Scotty Milas, scottmilasfranchisecoach.com. We have a guest today that's going to take us in a little bit of a different direction in regards to entrepreneurship, business ownership. One of the things that one of the questions I get from a lot of my clients is, why would I do a franchise over an independent, and why an independent over a franchise, or buy an existing business that's an independent? And frankly, there's no right or wrong reason, or what's better and what's not better, or this is worse than the other thing. There's no rhyme or reason. It's really more of what your preference is and the work and energy that you want to put into the business. So I thought today in our podcast, we would talk to somebody. My guest today is somebody that I have known for a very long time. Actually got connected when we were both in the recruiting industry. And we both kind of branched out and started our own companies. And here we are today. So I want to bring in Brian Pascoe, who is president and founder of Pascoe Workforce Solutions. Brian's company is a company that's dealing in the staffing industry. Temp to hire, retainer, full-time positions. Brian has been in this industry probably what he thinks is probably a lifetime. So I'd like to welcome Brian. Brian, welcome aboard.
Scott, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, it's great to be speaking with you again. I mentioned to a minute ago that you and I were connected many years ago. You were on the temp to hire side. I was on the full-time recruiting position, although we shared in job orders, I guess we called them back then. But we both made that.
Yeah.
We both made that decision. I think within the same time period that that vision of owning our own business was really the direction. Although you were a partner in the company that you were with when you and I met. So maybe take a couple of minutes here, introduce yourself to our audience, and then we'll kind of take a deeper dive into what drove you to be an entrepreneur, independence, owning your own business, and maybe some of the things you can, educate our listeners on why business ownership is wonderful, the headaches that ensure, and things that you did to be successful.
Sounds great. Yeah, I love the opportunity. Yeah, about myself. Born and raised in Connecticut, right out of high school, I decided I wasn't mature enough to go to college right away and join the United States Navy. And that kind of gave me the maturity I needed to enter the workforce, And as I got out of the Navy, I went to school locally here at Central Connecticut State University. So I've always kind of been a Connecticut guy, been able to travel here and there, but did kind of be normal when you get out of school, sales jump around. I was searching for job every 2 years. I chased a salary, went from one sales company to another sales company. And finally, I had the wake up call that most people my age have. My wife at the time was pregnant. So, all right, Brian, you got to grow up a little bit and find a career, And
right.
And that's how I stepped into recruiting. I got into the industry 19 years ago. My first year was with a big national recruiting firm that, everyone's familiar with. I won't give their name, but they were a great training ground for me, But as I was at a big national firm, I said to myself, I'm like, why are good people leaving here constantly? Like, what's going on? Where do I fit in this whole piece and puzzle? And I said to myself, do I want to be a minnow in the Atlantic Ocean, which I was at this big firm, or do I want to be a large bass in a small pond? And I said, that's kind of the approach I took. And I said, let me find a smaller firm that I could help develop, grow, and see where that takes me. And it led me to an opportunity with a company called Stewart Staffing Solutions, where I met you, under the guidance of a gentleman named Dick Stewart. And from there, Dick allotted me the opportunity to eventually open up my own firm, which is now Pascoe Workforce Solutions, that I've been owning and operating for about 9 years.
That's an interesting story, Brian. It's obviously, as you got into the recruiting, the staffing industry, it became, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, it obviously became a passion for you. I mean, you really enjoyed the business. You became successful as an individual contributor within. when walk us through that time when you woke up one morning and said, hey, I want to own my own business, or hey, Mr. Stewart, I want to be a partner in your business. I mean, when should somebody really kind of think about that approach if it's in the back of their mind, kind of that execution, or how is that execution going forward, making that mind to be an entrepreneur?
It's a great question. For me, I look back at this since, preparing for your podcast, and it happened about 6 or 7 years into the business. I had been promoted to a manager level, and I started to develop a team around me. I started to coach, train, really look at the hard numbers. And I started realizing how much revenue I personally was bringing in for the company. And then it expands to, okay, how much money is the company making off me? And, then the light bulb goes off and says, well, wait a minute. If I'm making this much and the company's making this much, if I did this on my own, this could all be mine at some point.
Right.
And I felt, I was lucky. I had an owner who was very hands off and let me kind of create and do things that I wanted to do in both of his offices. And through that, I said, I was basically doing his job without reaping the benefits of his job.
Okay.
So like I said, it was about 6 or 7 years into the business. And I said, if I have the opportunity, to either buy this company or go out on my own, now is the time to do it, and I started asking more questions about the P&L, profit and loss statements. I started looking at certain costs, and in my business, a lot of it basically is around insurance costs, whether it's workers' comp or liability. And I said, with the money I generate or my team generates, how profitable could I be on my own? How could I do this? And what are going to be the pitfalls? And listen, there's been plenty of sleepless nights, as
right.
and there was times, even I'll never forget a conversation I had the Monday that COVID was announced. My old owner said to me, I think you and now, my minority partner should close the business, should basically take the money you have in the bank, split it up, and close it and try to come back in a year or so, because I'm not sure you can get through this. This is something no one's ever seen. And that's a guy who I trusted, and I believe every word he said for the last 15 years. And we had just come off our best year ever, the year before COVID. And I said, how am I going to come off my best year ever and close? And I said to him flat out, I said, we're not doing it. I said, I'd rather go down with this ship than just give up on the ship, And the good news, Scott, we've been up 30% the last 3 years consecutively.
That's awesome.
And it feels good when your mentor and the old owner of the company says to you nowadays, not listening to me was the best career decision you've ever made. Yeah. So
I think there are a lot of us that had those emergency contingency plans, that fold up plan, when this whole COVID thing came, and I certainly did. And, and I'm glad I didn't, because like those 2 years turned out to be some of the best years in business. I think it opened a lot of doors and a lot of minds to people that business ownership, whether it's a franchise or an independent, or I buy an existing business, really opened the door to a lot of people and gave them time to think about it. But your strategy to do this, like you said, you started to piece the numbers together. I guess that was your first step. Hey, if I was on this own, and obviously the firm that you're with, the leadership, the ownership group at that point was very kind to you. So it wasn't that you wanted to get up and, walk into the office and say bye and try to take everybody with you.
Right.
That was not the right approach. And I would encourage anybody that's not the right approach, regardless of what you do. You want to make friends, not enemies.
Absolutely.
So talk to the audience about, as you started to put this together in your mind, you've now had this conversation. How much planning, or where was the planning of, it wasn't that you just woke up and Mr. Stewart said to you, hey, great idea, Brian, good luck.
Right. No.
So encouraging our listeners, young entrepreneurs, whether it's a franchise, like I said, or an independent, where should their structure be, Brian? How should they plan this out?
Yeah,
I mean, if there, I don't know if there's a book on it, but what's the best way, or at least the way you visualize it, to structure this to open a business?
one of the things that I did that helped me immensely was go to other leaders in my industry. I spent about a full year not only working with my current owner and sitting down with him, after hours, finding out how he kind of built it up, but going to other leaders in the industry. I've never, even nowadays, I don't pretend to know everything. I act like I do at times, but the reality is, I go to the best in the business and ask them what's made them successful. What would they do? What wouldn't they do? So, whatever business people are looking to get into, there's always someone who's done it longer, who's done it better, who's
Right.
done it more. And I encourage people, someone like me, if a new staffing president came to me and said, Brian, tell me how you got here, I'd sit down with them 2 or 3 times and explain to them. I wouldn't give them my client list, but I explained kind of things that have worked for me, haven't worked for me. And that's what I did. I went to some of the best owners in the we're lucky to have some of the best owners in my industry here in the New England market and in Connecticut where I reside. And I went to those owners and said, listen, here's what I'm thinking about doing. What do you recommend? What should I stay away from?
Okay.
What industries should I try to pivot to? And I was shocked how open they were to work with me, and to talk to me, because if you're good at what you do, you don't really think about competition. I don't look at the competition outside of my, 4 walls. I look at the competition within my own team. I don't look at it outside because, in this business, enemies could ruin you. Friends can make you. So
Right.
I really went and I spent about a full year researching, some of the best companies in this business and some of the best locally owned companies, most importantly. I'm not trying to be a national brand. I'm looking to keep it, kind of 4 or 5 offices
Yep.
regionally. And I went to those owners and said, how did it work? And a lot of the stuff that they told me, I still go with today. Some things, it doesn't make sense in my industry, but a lot of it that a lot of the wisdom that was given to me, I stick with, 9 years later.
So what you know can't hurt you, but what you don't know can really hurt you.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
the way kind of it's. So you did a lot of research. And
Correct.
now, as you're putting your plan together, one of the things that I like to talk about my clients, and maybe you can, share how you went through this, is the financial piece to starting a business.
Absolutely.
You've got to be capitalized. You don't want to be undercapitalized. So as you started to put the model together of what you wanted to do, and you had a pretty good clear of what you wanted to do because you've been in the industry, you were successful at it, you knew how to get the business. You knew
Absolutely.
how to hire the team. So talk about the financial structure. Was it, I went to the bank and talked to my banker and said this, I looked at my personal funds. Is it, do you want to be overcapitalized? Do you want to be undercapitalized? Talk to us about that piece, because that's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, it's funny. I don't think you could ever be overcapitalized, but one of the dangers of being overcapitalized is you tend to spend more,
Right.
when you have more money. And, and I always came from my dad's old saying was, you need to spend money to make money, and for us, we went to a bank, and one of the things we actually did, we worked through like a consortium, and we were privately funded. We didn't start with a bank right away. We were funded privately, and it was basically a line of credit. In my business, we bill, and normally companies don't pay us for about 90 days, and we pay people weekly. So we
Right.
quickly get deep in the hole. So we weren't really appealing. We weren't the most appealing company to a bank right away until they saw a couple of years of success. Now, obviously, as the time's gone on, we've gone to a bank. But from a personal finance side, I would tell people, don't be afraid to invest in yourself. If you have the belief in the business model you've planned, if you don't have a good business model, then you're already a step in the wrong direction. But if you have the business model and you have your own personal capital or equity or something to build up personally, invest in yourself. I didn't take any loans out. I still have not taken a loan out in 9 years in this business.
That's awesome.
And that's something I'm proud of. And we've been, now we're able to fund our own receivables. We own our own receivables. Nobody has any lien or anything on anything we have here. So we're self-funded, and we invested in ourselves. And listen, there was a couple of lean years,
Right.
One thing I will warn any new owners or entrepreneurs is don't pay yourself a huge salary right away.
Right.
I think the first, I would say 3 to 4 years, there were people, some of the people who worked under me were making more than me. I think at the end of the day, because I was like, how can I live? What kind of money do I need to live on? And from there, where do I reinvest the profits? Do I give it to myself? Do I reinvest it into building a new office,
Right.
furniture? And we've always made the right move of where we invest our money, whether it's back into our own pockets or whether it's back into the company. We've been lucky enough, where we've reinvested well.
Right. So it takes a lot of self-discipline, I guess is the way to say, to put this whole
Absolutely.
thing together.
Absolutely.
It's that structure, it's the operating side, it's the financial side, it's living by your standards and what you want to do moving forward in your goals. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a lot of hard work. I mean, it's not easy.
I also, one thing I said we did right away that was smart is we put a team around us, not internally, but externally, whether it's a financial guy or whether it's accounting firm. We did a lot of research of who we were going to do business with and who we were going to partner with so it could strengthen our brand. So we had a great guy who does all of our 401k and planning of that. We've been with the same accounting firm for the last 9 years who knows our books in and out, understands our industry. So we kind of put together a team that knew our business and can help us financially kind of get to the levels we wanted to go.
Kind of a silent partner.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That you don't have to pay like a partner.
Exactly. Exactly. Brian, I've always looked at it as entrepreneurship, people who want to own their own business, being an entrepreneur. There are two types. There's the visionary, which is the category that I put you in, that has the talent and the expertise and the drive to put all the pieces together, because there are a lot of moving parts in business. Now, in my business, I mean, I outsource a lot of the people that do work for me. You have employees. So regardless, there are a lot of moving parts. So you're that visionary, you know how to put those pieces together and manage it. Then there's the entrepreneur who really is the person kind of behind the business that can generate the business, but really isn't good at putting all the other pieces together. Hence a franchise that helps you do all that.
Sure.
So if someone was considering and listening to this, hey, I want to start my own business, is it safe to say that somebody who's a visionary like yourself, and that's how I define you as a business person, really either needs to be able to understand how all the moving parts work, or be able and accept to hire the people to do those parts that they don't like to do or are not good at?
I would say yes. For me, it was very simple. It's like I knew where my talents lied, and I knew where my talents didn't lie. And the first thing I did when I took over this business is hired someone smarter than me.
Right.
And I hired a gentleman. His name is Brody Cunningham, and he started off kind of managing my office. And through the years, I've made him a minority partner for me. And Brody's strength lied in the operational piece that sometimes a lot of folks like me who are sales driven and team building driven, we don't always focus on the operational piece. And we know the bottom line, we know the numbers, but what does it take to get there? And for me, that wasn't my strength, and I knew that immediately. And when I brought Brody on, I tasked him with like learning, getting more comfortable, say with QuickBooks or the software.
Right. Yep.
Reaching out to all of our vendors, whether it's a copier guy or the paper, whoever it was, and kind of seeing if we could renegotiate things and say, this isn't the old school, hey, we've been doing this with Dick Stewart for years. Now this is Pascoe Workforce. Let's renegotiate.
Right.
Let's bring things to the table, because we weren't sitting on the mountain of money that my old owner was sitting on when I took over the company. So the best thing I would say for a visionary is to surround yourself with at least one, if not two people who you trust unconditionally to say, hey, listen, you're in charge of this part of the business, whether it's the accounting and finance piece, whether it's the operational piece, and let them do it. Obviously, Brody and I, my partner, we talk daily, but there's about once a quarter we really dig into the numbers and see, okay, what's working, what's not working, where can we pivot to, where do we need to get out of. But I would just say, find people you trust, and hire people you trust. And if you trust them, let them do what they're best at.
Right. Right. I equate what you're saying to what we call being store blind or business blind. You come into your business every day and you start to see the same thing, but you don't realize, that the light bulb's out, or,
Right.
Bob or Mary is coming in at 9:20 instead of 9. What I mean? That, or, the cleaning service didn't, isn't doing what they should be doing, whatever
Absolutely.
it may be. But
Absolutely.
and that those things add up. So I mean, it's and I remember having a conversation a few weeks ago before the end of the year. Somebody asked me, who is in the line of work I am, why don't you do all that stuff yourself? Why do you outsource it? And I said, because I first of all, I'm not as good as the person I have doing it.
Correct.
And number two, I wouldn't know if I'm doing it wrong or not. I mean, I don't have, the checks and balances kind of thing. So it's interesting that you bring that up. So I call it being business blind. So
business blind, and it's funny you said you wouldn't know if you're doing it wrong or not. And when you're in a leadership role, no one's going to tell you if you're doing it wrong or not.
Right.
They're afraid to,
Right.
So you don't get the honest answer, and that's a great point you made.
So let's talk about your industry for a second. I mean,
Sure.
Look, you flip the TV on, you flip the news on, the radio. We're all hearing things about certain economic conditions may or may not happen. The staffing industry has always been a big industry. It's a need. It's not a want. So let's talk about your industry, what Pascoe, strengths are. Give you an opportunity to kind of, give our listeners, if they're in the local area, to be able to call you. What is it about the staffing industry, and what are you seeing as far as labor over the next 6, 12, 18 months? I mean, it's anyone's guess, I guess, but
it is anyone's guess. And I've had a lot of talks recently, excuse me for a second, with companies that I work with. I think one of my roles now is turned into kind of educating my clients or prospective clients on where I think the market is now, where it's going. And my personal belief is, I think what they tell you on the news or what you read in the paper is not really close to what the reality is from a labor standpoint. Granted, there are a ton of jobs available, and everyone says, well, there's not enough people. Well, there are enough people. We haven't sold off, a couple of countries locally. I mean, there are enough people. The reality is there. You just mentioned two words: want and need. There's a group of people who need to work, who actually really don't really want to work nowadays.
Right, they have to. Yep.
But they have to. So we're trying to find the people who have to work, and because they seem to be the ones who will get us out. My agency, we do. We're a little bit involved in everything right now from a hiring standpoint. We do the temporary labor, which could be a project base, whether it's a 1-week assignment or a 5-week assignment. We do temp to hire, which gives companies the ability to kind of try before you buy approach. Let's see how this person works out. How do they fit into our company? If they're great, then we let the companies take them on board. And we do the direct hire, where we move someone from company A to company B for a better opportunity. I would say now, early in 2023, the direct hire business has exploded. Companies are fighting for the best talent, and the smart companies are willing to invest, in staffing firms like mine. And kind of what separates my firm from a lot of others is owner operated. As the owner, I've done this business from, day one recruiter to now owning, and I'm still kind of at the forefront. I still am involved with sales negotiations. I do recruit on a high level for jobs. So when you work with Pascoe, you're actually working with Pascoe, Brian Pascoe, and I'm comfortable in saying that my team, they all buy into this. Like, we're owner operated. We have the ability to make things flexible. It's just not the cookie cutter staffing that people are used to. Pascoe Workforce will work with you to be flexible to your budget, your needs, and we'll do our best. The beauty of my job everything is free to a client until they hire the right person.
Right. Yep. Yep. I know. Yep. People don't
And
realize.
Scott,
Yep.
you know that very well, yeah, and so we do a lot of background work that people either don't understand or sometimes might not
Right.
appreciate, but we don't get paid for it unless you get a retainer. All the work we do, all the digging and searching for people we do is free until that company hires the perfect person,
Right.
and then they got to stay there for 3 months in order to get paid on it.
Right. Right. You know, Brian, one of the things as we're winding down here, one of the things that I've learned over my years is that entrepreneurs, are planners. They're always thinking about the next thing. You have offices now in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Maine.
Correct.
You've taken something and expanded it, made it very successful. Is there anything next for Brian Pascoe? I mean, do you see yourself connecting to other businesses that are related to the industry? Or is it, hey, I'm really glad where we are right now, and I'm just going to keep making it work with my partners?
Yeah, it's a great question. The reality of that question is, we're always looking for the next best thing. And I'm always looking to not only expand what I do, expand what this company does. Me personally, I've looked into kind of becoming more of a consultant to companies in a lot of ways, going out there and impending, giving my wisdom in this industry, and not always saying, hey, listen, let's fill this position. Maybe I can go to a company and help them structure their entire HR department. So for me, growth is always on my mind. I'm looking to expand the company, opening up in a couple new markets in the New England region. And I'm also looking to possibly, start a consulting firm, with other owners and other industries. I personally invested this past year into, an executive consultant and a culture coach. And it was one of the best moves I ever made, because she came into my industry, broke it down in a way I've never broken it down before, as Scott, as a business owner and as a leader, you always don't know how the people below you or you work with feel about you.
Right.
They'll never tell you, and how they feel about the company. So for me, I learned more about myself and my company in 2022, and it's gotten me to this kind of visionary state again, where I was 10 years ago, to how can I expand in this? How can I brand Pascoe Workforce more? What other benefits can we offer companies outside of recruiting? Could we be consultants? Could we do things? So yeah, for me, 9 years into it, I'm still in what can I do to make this better mode for me personally and for the company.
Well, I think that's great that, to close out here, that you have a passion to not only be successful in your own business, but to help others be successful in what they do. There are a lot of people out there that have the mentality is crush the other people. You don't have that. I mean,
I don't.
I think you realize that your success is related to all the information that people helped you with when you wanted to start. So kind of give that back, which I think is a key attribute, and people appreciate, and who want to do business with.
Absolutely.
That's great. Brian, what is the best way for people to get a hold of you? I mean, if they had any questions about the industry or your services, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Best way? Well, we were lucky. We have a new website at www.pascoworkforce.com. I would tell people to visit our website, a little bit more about me and my team. Also, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty often poster like yourself, Scott. And it's Brian Pascoe at LinkedIn. It's Pascoe. A lot of people leave the E out, but there is an E at the end. And like I said, we have a couple numbers, both locally in Mass and Connecticut. And if anyone has any questions or are looking for any people, we appreciate the business as always.
All right, great. Well, Brian, I thank you for spending the last 15, 20 minutes. Great information, and it's great to see that you're successful and continuing to be successful. Again, this is Scotty Milas, ScottMilasFranchiseCoach.com. All things considered franchising. Our guest today has been Brian Pascoe, president and founder of Pascoe Workforce Solutions. And until next time.
Appreciate it,
Three,
Scott.
3, 2, 1.